Good morning, folks. Welcome back. We're trying this new format and we're giving it a go, but we're not quite sure if it's right yet, but we will get it right eventually. So it'll take a little bit of a while to do that. But yeah, anyway, we're going to get there. So, number one, first up, a big shout out to John Laff. John has just come out of hospital after his heart and kidney transplant. We're also really pleased and really chuffed that he's making really good progress. So if you see him up on the thing, I think he's popped up on the screen there this morning. Hi John, and get well soon, mate, and get back in your workshop and getting into your lots of bits of play that you do. And back on the computer, because I've got some plans for you. So anyway, give it a, yeah, get well soon, mate. And anyway, we'll go, yeah. So, now, Paul, I know you don't turn, but hey,
thanks
in
for
the
watching.
future, thanks for watching. So give it a shot down the track. If you could go somewhere where someone's got a lathe and have a little play, it might get you juices running and so forth. Anyway, back to what we did. Last week I turned a little pot. Let's see, this is the little pot here. This was a little piece of camphor that I picked out of the bucket. The bucket's down here. I'm going to talk to you about that in a second. And that was a fairly simple, fairly easy little vase, and it came from generally a square piece of timber. There was the only thing that was wrong with it was there was a little fault in the side of it, but when I turned it out, it looked quite nice. So now that's just got a coat of wax on it, so as you can see, it's relatively flat. I could make it a bit shinier by using a different wax, but anyway, but that's that one. And during the week, I picked another piece out. This is a piece of Osage orange, and this was a pretty rough piece of timber, and as you can see, it's got a couple of little faults in it. It's got some cracks in the top, just along the top there, which I've repaired, and it's got a big crack along here, which adds character to the piece. And basically, this is the sort of thing that you can make with just a piece of ostensibly firewood, right? Now, last week I said we have a bucket of what would normally be firewood, and that's it there. Now, what I said to you was this little bucket here looks like a whole lot of firewood, but in actual fact it's gold to me. And so somebody didn't believe me, so what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to pick a piece out of here and I'm going to turn it into something interesting, or try to anyway. So we'll give it a go and see how we go. So there's all sorts of things in here that I have. Now, I cut a piece off here just a moment ago, and this is was a fence post. Okay, so it's the top of a rose mahogany fence post from out the back bush somewhere. And there's another piece there. You can see they're quite gnarly and quite large. That one's probably a bit too large to play with on screen, but this one here I could probably cut a piece off. In actual fact, the piece that I cut off should be in the box here somewhere. And there it is there. So that looks like it's relatively solid. Now, when I'm using these, or when I'm trying to cut a piece of this, what I do is I try to find solid material, trim it up, and see what I can get out of it. The rough stuff on the outside, what we have to do is make sure there's no stones or barbed wire, particularly with a fence post, barbed wire, nails, or some people like to shoot at them. There's all sorts of things that can end up in a fence post. So you just need to make sure that you have no metal in it that's going to actually damage any of the tools, or it's going to fly out while you're working with it. So this is how I go about it. That bit came off there, so it was actually quite a wide fence post. In here we have stumpy little bits of Osage orange. Now that little piece of Osage orange is the cousin to this little vase that I've made. So as you can see, from that to that is quite a change, and it looks quite nice. So we'll have a little little dig around here, another piece of fence post, piece of blackwood there. There's all sorts of bits of stuff in here, another piece of Osage orange. So these sorts of posts and things like that, if you know what the timber or this sort of rough timber is, if you know what sort of timber it is, what it will do, it'll teach you the characteristics of some of these timbers so that you can actually work better with them, because you understand how the timber works with particular chisels. So we're going to use a piece of the rose mahogany, a piece of the fence post, and this is how I go about it. So I know I've got a piece here, and I'll probably use that a little bit later, but this is what we do. So off to the bandsaw. When I'm using the bandsaw, what I try to do is I try to make sure it's relatively square, unless I'm making something that's off centre. Now, relatively square means it's got to be sort of that square. So I've got to cut a piece off there. Now, I can get a ruler and measure that, and then just measure the distance and cut that straight through there. But this is the easy way of doing it. Just set it up there. There's no need to be prescriptive about this, because remember, it is a rough piece of timber, and you're going to turn it into something smooth anyway. So turn it onto there. Make sure that's steady. If you want to make sure that it's not going to move around on you while you're trying to cut it. I've just realised that we're using the camera microphones, and I haven't turned on my other one. Anyway, so what we have this here now, hopefully you heard all what I said earlier, all the stuff. I've got this nice piece of timber, and as you can see, it's quite solid all through here. Through here there's a big crack down the middle and a bit rough on the end, so I might knock the end off. That one. This one could be a small vase or something as well, so it could be a piece. This is the earlier one that I cut with the rough on the sides of it, so let's see which one to use. I might use this one here, and I'll just cut the end off that, and probably not much I can do with that piece. So this one here, we'll do something to it. So I need to find the centre. So it's rectangular, sort of squarish rectangular. So at least I can get centre. You can guess where these are if you like. I like to make sure that things are, pretty close. After a period of time, you'll get used to finding your centre without having to do this task. But while you're in the beginning, this is the sort of thing that you should be doing. Is making sure things are, pretty close to accurate anyway. Now I'm going to turn it between centres to start with, so what I need to do is just put myself a little centre like that. Like I said last week, I've seen people who just put it on and just bash it onto the spur drive on their headstock, but in the past I've damaged bearings on the headstock, and I don't want to do that to this lathe because they're quite expensive to fix. So I need a spur drive into the headstock. There's lots of different shaped spur drives, so choose one that suits the work you're doing. And I have a revolving or rotating tailstock setter. Give yourself a bit of room to work with. Now what I want to do here is I just want to turn a spigot on one end of it, and I'm going to try and save some of this in the shape of the vase. So when I look at this, what I can see in the top here, there's a bit of a, or in this end here, there's a bit of a valley or a bit of a crack, or it could eventuate into a crack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the spigot on this end, and then this will be the top of the vase. So I try to choose the side that I'm going to use. Now it's really rough, so I just need to be very careful that I don't catch anything. And one of the comments that I got last week was that the sound was pretty ordinary while I was cutting and trying to talk at the same time. So I've decided I'm not going to talk while I'm cutting. I'll stop the machine and explain things as I go. So that was the thing I was using. Now I'm going to use a small roughing gouge, and as you can see, it's fairly ugly looking tool when you compare that to some of the spindle gouges that we're going to use, but it'll do the job. It's relatively heavy. I've got a lightish piece of timber here, so let's see if we can get started. So turn my speed down to start with. And just get it to rotate. So I can turn it up a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just rough off one end of it so that I've got something to work the spigot on. So what I've been doing here is I've had the chisel tipped over on its side, so I'm just using the bottom edge of the roughing gouge, and it's giving a nice little shearing cut. You can hear those shavings coming off quite nicely. Also, the thing that's going to be nice with this is all of this is burnt, so when you look at the timber here, it's going to be quite dark, so we can use that as part of the feature. Just a parting tool, and I'm just going to part a little shoulder on that. I'm going to fit my spigot into my chuck. Now this is a dovetail chuck, so it has a little dovetail shape on here. So I need to have a size. So the size of that is 45 millimeters. Get myself a pair of calipers. Use all sorts of different sorts of calipers. I've got this set at, I can set this at 45, and as you can see, it's got to go a little smaller. For a piece that's going to be cut off, I could leave it as it is and just fit that straight to the jaws, because it's going to be waste anyway. It's not as if I have to sort of rectify or repair anything anything on that piece there. It's going to end up as waste. So I think I might leave it as it is instead of bringing it down to 45. I'll just square up the end a little bit more. I'll use my 3/8 spindle gouge to do that, just to flatten the edge off it. Now when you use the spindle gouge, tip it over on its side when you start, and then we'll rotate it down and just take it straight into the middle. Don't be afraid of a little catch every now and then. Just find a skew. Just want the skew, just use the edge of the skew to give me a nice clean shoulder. And that's giving me a nice dovetail shape. That should sit quite nicely, and then we can do the rest of the shaping after we fit it to chuck. Out fine, I'll leave that there. Chuck in. Okay, so sit it on its shoulder. That's the shoulder you built when you start it. Now before you tighten it up, bring your tailstock up. Put a little bit of pressure on it, not much. And what that will do is it will help centre it a little easier than trying to guess it. Now you can leave the tailstock there while you turn the rest of the rough out. Let's have a look and see what we can produce out of this one. As you can see, it is quite a rough piece of timber. I'm just setting up just a little bit below centre with the tail rest, with the tool rest. And you can see that we're bouncing around a fair bit, basically because it's missing that piece and this piece, and the rest of it you can actually see it's got quite nice timber in there, so it's going to be really, really good. The thing about using pieces of timber like this is, as I said earlier, it gives you an idea of the characteristics of some of these timbers. Now you'll notice this is giving really nice shavings. They're all dark and burnt, but they're really nice shavings coming off a relatively sharp chisel. So keep the chisel sharp, and you'll find that you'll eventually work out exactly what happens when you present the chisel to your timber. So we've got a bit there. We've got a bit of a split down the middle here. I really don't want to have that interfering too much, so I'm going to turn the top out here. Even if I have to shorten it down to a little one like this, it's still going to work. So the shavings are quite large. They're really nice shavings because the chisel's sharp. So those shavings look really nice. Alright, now that I have most of the thing round, I start looking at getting a different shape. So I might change the chisel. I could use the same chisel, but I might change it to a different chisel. Let's go to a 1/2 inch and create something at the top there. So I'm going to use as much as I can of the timber. Let's have a look and see where that crack is not actually interfering too much. Now I'm just making the shape up as I go. The crack is still a little bit there, so we're going to go again. We've got quite a large piece, so we're going to have a long, thin vase. So now you can see a shape occurring. It looks quite a nice little shape. Got a couple of cracks in it. I've still got some of the burnt stuff on the outside of it. I've got this bit of faulty stuff here. The problem with it is if I make a thin foot on the bottom of it, it's not going to stand up on its own, so I'm going to have to make a foot to fit. And we'll do that with the last little bit on the end there. But the rest of it, I think we'll make it a little bit thinner in here, or a lot thinner in there actually, and try and sort of save it. timber there, so I might have to change tack and use the chisel a little differently. So use the bottom edge and use it like a little spray bar at the bottom edge. Looking at the shape on here. I'm starting to get a bit of thin there. Still a bit fat in here. Shape isn't too bad. I have got a couple of cracks in here. And I'm going to have to do something with this one here. Can't just let it sit there because as soon as I start to play with the end of it, I'm going to chip a bit off. And there's one here that needs a bit of TLC. So this is how I go about fixing those little cracks. A little bit of super glue. Now I don't mind putting a bit in here because it's not going to show up when we've got finish on it. We'll just save these little bits here. And this one at the top here, I don't want that piece to fall out. Now, one of the reasons I use super glue is because it dries relatively quickly. And if you want it to dry even quicker than that, get yourself a little tube of, a little spray of accelerator. Give it a squirt with the accelerator. Okay. Back to the chisel. I'll go to an even smaller chisel for the top end now. That's my shape. Let's have a play with the bottom. So we've got a regular shape, still a bit too fat in there, but we'll fix that in a second. Just want to get into the base, create a little foot. I think a piece fell out there. Oh, it'll work. nice. Pretty much taken too much of it. So again. Let's leave that as it is for the moment. A little better. It's got still a bit of work to be done in there, but there we go. All quite solid in there now. I've just got to fix this neck. It's not. I'm not happy with it. Go to a different chisel again. Because we've got a shape that starts here and sort of rolls over there, and then it goes back into a cove, we want a seamless transition from that shape into that shape there. So that's what I'm sort of working on at the moment, but I've pretty much got it right. I reckon I could do a little bit of sanding on that. That would look quite nice. So I might just do that for a sec. Now I'm going to turn the dust extractor on, and that's going to make a little bit of a noise. A bit warm in the workshop today. This is 180. Bring the dust extractor over. I broke it. A couple secs, I'll fix it. There we go. Okay, so noisy dust extractor. So now we have quite an acceptable shape. We'll see once you get away from the smooth parts of it, you can see that the rough bits actually look quite nice sitting up there. Probably need to take a little bit more off this end here. It looks a little bit bottom heavy. So just sanding that gives you a bit of an idea. Shift the dust away. Tool rest, where did I put it? Yeah, so when I look at my shape, I can see it's still a bit fat in the bottom of there. So let's take that off. Power up a bit. That looks a bit better. Okay, a bit of sanding. Sanding noise. Much nicer shape. Okay, drill a hole in the middle. Now last week I showed you two different techniques in drilling holes in the middle. I'm going to use the stable one. And that's about the right size. It'll be a nice big hole. Now remember, there was a crack in this one. If it fails, well then I'm going to have to cut the top off and make a different shape. See that? Now I haven't measured the hole, but I reckon I can go the full length of that drill bit. Okay, so I'm just cleaning out because you hear it squawking, it's filling up the flutes on the drill bit.
Ouch.
That's a bit noisy, isn't it? A little bit at a time, I think.
Yeah.
Must have, fence post must have got wet. I think that's deep enough anyway. Remember, it is only a little dry vase. Doesn't need to be really deep. Dry flowers and a dry arrangement. So what I'm going to do now is just hollow out a little bit, take that end off. Right. And to start with the chisel on its side, tip it over as you work in. Okay, so I've got quite a nice little lip on there. That's the same shape as the outside. So on the inside, I don't think I'll go any smaller than that. I'll keep it that thickness, that way it gives it a bit of strength. Remember, there was a crack in there. You can see where that crack was, it was right there. So it's quite solid now. So just about now sanding it up, putting a finish on it, and then we'll part it off and then fix the bottom. And that should give us the last 15 minutes of the show today. Piece of 180. One way of doing the 180 is roll it into a little cone. Like that. Just stick it in the hole and just work it in.
It's a really pleasing shape on that neck.
Yes, it
and
came out quite well, didn't it?
Yeah.
Just need to find some fresh sandpaper.
This is what I would call a very classic shape.
Yep. Have a dusty on. One of the problems with sanding when you've got a fault or a missing piece is when the piece of paper rotates over here, it bashes onto there and actually lifts the sandpaper off the piece, and you can see where we have a couple of lines here that have been missed because of the pressure of that piece skipping across our piece of sandpaper. So sometimes you might need to just stop, sand with the grain for a little bit, just to take off those heavy ones. I'm using 240 here. Particularly with these, this is softish timber, so it's going to work. You can see the lines, the chisel lines or that occurred. When the rough bit actually jumped across the chisel. It's just a matter of getting rid of those physically. A bit of hard sand never hurt anybody, so they say. The catch cry that I use all the time is make sure everything's finished nicely, because it's the last thing you do to your job. It's the first thing that everybody sees when they pick it up and when they have a look at it. You take your piece inside and say, look, I'm going to make this out of a piece of firewood. Can't get accolades if you've got a lot of scratches in it. Hear that flapping across the sandpaper. Down to 320 now. Good 320. Used piece. Checking. That's pretty good. Little piece of 600 now. Some people say you don't need to go that far when you're putting waxes and things on, but I like to make sure that the finishing is done really nicely. Nice. Now I'm going to pad finish. Now last week I used a bit of CONSTANTIA oil. Now this is an old, shift the dust extractor out of the way. This is an old jar of CONSTANTIA, and just going to paint that in there. You can see what colour that's turned out to be. The glue that I used, the super glue, is now hidden amongst that colour. What burnt stuff is, you can see it actually makes it really dark and it pops up as well. It looks really nice. Now normally I'd let this sit, we don't have time for it to sit, so you can see the colour in the timber is starting to show. I'm brushing plenty on because I want it to soak in. I left this Constantia oil out in the weather and it's gone a little bit hard on the top, so it's actually perfect for what I want to do here because it's a bit more solid, it's not runny. You don't want it dripping all over the lathe. You can see the colour in that has just come up superb.
Beautiful.
So normally I let that sit for an hour or so. We don't have the hour, but I'm just going to show you what it looks like once you've wiped the excess off. You can see that it's starting to look nice and shiny, and that's from a scrap piece of timber really. It's something that, like I said, out of the firebox, and you have something that could become a nice little gift for someone. Let's turn that on so it's push. When you're using the rag, don't wrap it around your fingers to do this because if it catches, you end up with your fingers in the lathe. The best thing is you just put your hand on the outside of a piece of rag, and if it catches, you can only go let it flat until you turn the lathe off. Okay, so the next step after that is a dose of wax. Now, I've got heaps of waxes. This is another one. This is a Beckett's clear wax, and it's relatively solid, and I experiment with my waxes. I don't say use this one or use that one. I try to experiment so that I get a bit of an understanding of how timbers react with each of the different waxes or finishes that I like to put on things. Over a period of time, you'll probably find that you have a particular taste when it comes to what you want pieces to look like. And so you'll gravitate to the different waxes. There's lots and lots on the market. I actually quite like the Constantia one. This one here's another experimental one. Gives a nice finish. I know a lot of people like to just use beeswax. That's a very good finish for something that's not going to be out in the weather. And so there we have a nice little vase out of something that ostensibly would have been burnt. Okay, so now time to cut it off. Be really careful here, I don't want to damage it or break it. I don't have a lot of material to work with, and a lot of the stuff that I'm going to work with is already damaged. So, with my parting tool, just going to go in here with the parting tool. Just go very carefully. I'm doing a little undercut in this so that it's hollow in under the base. Now I'm just going very carefully. I'm giving myself a little bit of room, so I'm working back and forth towards the chuck and towards the vase. Just a little bit. When I was cutting that, I could feel a little jumpy bit, which means there's a bit of damage in under there, and I don't want the thing to fall off. So I'm going to go to my homemade parting tool. I have to do the base. So the tool is too small. Oh, sorry, the vase is too small to actually be able to reverse it. The neck is too thin. There's a chance I could damage it. And so just with a little bit of 180. Starting to get there. I wore that little bit of 180 out. I'll try another bit. I could have used a piece of 120. Okay, so we've run out of time, and I still need to do a little bit more work to there because there's a little nut in there, and that was the tear out that we had, but it needs a little bit more sanding, and I'll do that off camera. But from that to that, as you can see, just out of a rough piece of timber, we've turned something that's quite beautiful. It's got lots of different character to it, so it's got a little bit of rough, barky type surface there. Got a bit of burnt on the back side of it, so whichever way you look at it, it will always look quite nice. So, as I said, from a bucket of scrap, a bucket of firewood, you can produce things that look quite nice just with a little bit of effort, a little bit of thought, and think about your design. So that's it for this week. Now, if you have haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. Next week I'm going to start a whole new project. We're not going to do a solely only turning piece. We're going to make a few pens, and then we're going to make a box to fit them all in. So it's going to be a combination box and pen set, and that'll go over a period of 3 or 4 weeks. So I have to make pens first, then I have to make the box next. Now, a lot of people don't make pens. They find them tedious and hard to do, but hey, they're another source of revenue for those people who like to sort of make this stuff and sell it at markets, or they like to give gifts away that they've handmade. So, and I'm a big fan of that. So, yeah, so that's what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. So take care, and John, get well. We know you're out of hospital, so look after yourself, and we will catch you all next week.